Good morning. Welcome to the Berlin Freedom of Expression Forum 2012. Today we have Judy Muller with us. Thank you for joining us.
Nice to be here.
And let's start with the first round of questions. How do you view the relationship between grassroots organisations and hyperlocal newspapers?
So glad you asked this question because I just happen to have written a book about this very thing. Shameless self-promotion is us. I wrote a book called Emus Loose in Egnar, Big Stories from Small Towns, about small town newspapers in America, which are actually thriving. Not just surviving, but thriving as opposed to the big dailies. Now, the impact of grassroots organizations on those, I'm not sure how that works. Local papers are self-contained businesses, and that's why they work, because people can't get their news anywhere else but that paper for that neighborhood, and the advertisers can't advertise anywhere else. So as long as that happens, now, that said, there are certain threats to those papers. Craigslist, so far, which is a classified ad website which is free, has destroyed classified advertising in big city newspapers, but it hasn't quite made it out to the rural America towns yet. And the day that happens, it could change things. So I think all the editors have their eye on the internet and what's going to happen there. They're all using it. They're all putting their content up, but they're making people pay for it.
To follow on, following the Supreme Court's ruling in Citizens United versus FEC that money counts as freedom of speech and expression, and the subsequent rise of super PACs, in a quote by Melanie Sloan, the director of Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, she stated that we're moving to an age where we won't have the senator from Arkansas or the congressman from North Carolina, but the senator from Walmart and the congressman from the Bank of America. What is the role of super PACs in American politics, and what dangers do they pose for democracy?
Well, super PACs, I think, pose an enormous danger to democracy. Citizens United was a stunning decision to call a corporation a person with freedom of speech rights. I mean, this was unheard of. I mean, I can't call up Exxon and say, so what's your favorite color? I mean, it's not a person. But the Supreme Court, in ruling that, has freed up all these super PACs, political action committees is what a PAC is, to take enormous amount of money and throw it at one candidate. The only reason Newt Gingrich is still a viable candidate in the presidential primary election is because he has this one huge rich backer who is giving all this money to a super PAC. Before that, donations were limited, and you had to name who the person was. What does this do to the rights of the small person who doesn't have millions of dollars, who just wants to give $1, give $5 to their candidate, maybe nothing, just wants to get out and put a few posters on their lawn? What kind of a voice does that person have when it's drowned out by mountains of money? And you know, I'm not being very impartial on this one. I think it's devastating for the democratic process.
Well, my colleague would like to ask a few questions.
Yes.
Yes. With the rise of the independent news media, the power of traditional press became limited. Do you think that traditional media, to combat this, tries to be more use more censorship and be a little bit more partisan to?
Well, I think that some media outlets, in order to keep the revenue coming in and an audience loyal to them, have gone to more niche broadcasting or niche reporting. And by that I mean Fox News, for example, is clearly proud of the fact that they are a conservative organization aimed towards a conservative audience. And yet, I watch Fox News. I have friends who are reporters for Fox News, and I think they do a good job. Fox News in the evening, however, is all talk show and commentary. So people have to be trained and educated to understand the difference between commentary and news. You can watch Fox News reporting, and it's totally mainstream traditional reporting. You watch Fox News in the evening where the commentators and the talk show hosts are going, and that's clearly Republican, right-wing, Tea Party stuff, which is fine, but know the difference. I think that I don't think censorship is what's happening. I think what's happening is marketing to specifics and not all media are doing that. Not all news outlets are doing that. They want a fair, impartial product, and there are a lot of people who are hungry for that. Can I believe this source? I think National Public Radio, the major newspapers, I think have credibility, but there are always people who want their biases confirmed, and those people are going to go to those places where they're told they're right, no matter what. And that's a danger to democracy.
During the conference, we were talking a lot about how people's interest forms the media content. Mm-hmm. And in your speech, you said that it's a good slogan to open the freezer.
Yes.
And do you think because of people's change or because of the shift in people's interest, journalists open different freezers?
I'd be happy if they open any freezer, quite frankly. I mean, the whole point is to check out whatever information you're given. I think that there's a sense of not wanting to check it out if it's going to end up upsetting your point of view. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's so important to start educating people at a very young age in critical thinking skills before they get all these biases so cemented, before they say they're, listen to only what their parents told them. Get out there and have an open mind and think about things critically. We got to start really young to get that done, I think.
You were reporting on several very exciting and big cases.
Yes.
In your journalistic career, what was the highlight of your career?
Oh, my goodness. People ask me that a lot. That's hard to say. I loved being on a presidential campaign, being in the thick of it, and seeing what it's like for a candidate out on the road like that and talking to people. So I loved politics. I also love covering environmental stories in the West. I am from the West. I have a home in Colorado in the mountains. I fish. I've written about fly fishing for Sports Illustrated and a couple of other magazines. So I'm very interested in the environment. And so when ABC would say, go take 2 weeks and report on water in the West and how it's being used, I go, okay. I love that. That's not even work. That's fun. So the O.J. Simpson case consumed 2 years of my life, both court trials. One was civil, the first was criminal. He was acquitted in the criminal trial, found guilty, or not, found liable in the civil trial. And I have to say, my children think I need a 12-step program to get rid of my O.J. obsession. Every time something comes up, I'll say, that reminds me of the O.J. case. They think but when you spend 2 years of your life on something. That said, I won an Emmy for the play-by-play description of O.J. Simpson on the, when the slow speed chase when they were after him. He tried to go to Mexico and he came back, and all television was disrupted for this, live coverage of the capture of O.J. Simpson. The fact that I won an Emmy for this, I love the Emmy, but the topic's sort of embarrassing, so I put it way up on a shelf where people can't read what it's for. But I have to say, covering trials is always exciting. It's a real-life drama, and you never know what's going to happen. You can't predict. And then the reaction, for instance, in the O.J. case, that case shed such light on the different ways blacks and whites in America view justice, which was no surprise to blacks, big surprise to a lot of whites. And they needed to be surprised that way. We needed to see these disparities. And that was the first time, I think, for a wide audience, that curtain had been pulled back. And we could see that if you live in a certain part of Los Angeles, the police are not your friends. And people needed to know that. So a lot of that came out in that trial, and I was glad to be part of that.
You're so passionate when you're talking about these cases in journalism and media. Do you consider it to be do you think it's your profession or your hobby?
It's everything. I mean, if you aren't getting up in the morning and going to a job you love, then you're wasting your life. I'm a storyteller. It is the most exciting job in the world. I get up in the morning, when I'm a working reporter, I don't know what that day is going to hold. Now, if you're a person who likes predictability, go into insurance sales, in the same little cubicle every day. When I get up, one day they called and said, would you like to fly in zero gravity with Buzz Aldrin today? And they flew me up in one of those. And we floated in zero gravity, and I was with one of the men who walked on the moon, and we're doing flips, and then I threw up. But never mind. I'm never going to space. I couldn't take it. But I thought, what an amazing thing. I'm 60 years old, and I'm flying in zero gravity with Buzz Aldrin. What kind of a job is this? This is wonderful. So not every day is like that, and you get some real bad stories now and then, but I just don't think there's any work that beats it. You're entrusted with other people's stories. They trust you to tell their story fairly. I think that's an amazing gift. Yeah.
I do have one more question, which is perhaps a touch controversial. How can we increase media literacy where there's a failure in the public and even the private education system to teach history, among other subjects? Can you explain media literacy in respect to being an agent of socialisation with respect to minority groups and dominant society? One of the criticisms that's made is that media and education, even in job training, are geared more towards the dominant classes. How can media and cultural diplomacy help in dismantling these constraints?
Oh, I think this is the way to dismantle it. I mean, news literacy, I call it news literacy more than media literacy because I'm not as interested in advertising and all of those things, is the clearest path to breaking down these kinds of barriers. We have something called Intersections Los Angeles, which is a blog site that we have at USC that invites the community of South LA, which has been tragically underserved by the media in LA, to tell the stories of South Central Los Angeles. And we have enlisted people, students in the schools, people in the community, to become bloggers on that site. So they are not only readers of the site, but they are invested in it. That said, there is a digital divide in our country where a lot of kids don't go home to houses that have computers at home. They get them at school, but that's not the same thing. They aren't looking at their iPhone every day. They aren't on an iPad. And that's a huge gulf, and we do have to fix that, or we're never going to break down. Everybody has to be on the same community discussion, and if they can't do that, if they're not wired, so we've got to come up in this area. It's Al Gore has been on this penchant for a long time, and really been trying to push to get more computers in the school, but there's no reason why a Bill Gates or somebody couldn't come along and make sure that every kid should have their own laptop at home. It's just basic. It's like saying you don't have any books at home, like you don't have any pencil and paper. I mean, in this age, we all have to be wired, connected.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I'm as big a critic as whoever asked that question. Okay.
Well, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for.
It's been delightful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. You weren't going to ask a question?
No, I was just thinking.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.